essays without touching them, just like these. Unless you're the most interesting man in the world.
That can be pretty interesting.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
The beer man.
Yeah, so he's at museums. He's allowed to to touch the art. That's why he's the most interesting man in the world. So we are not the most interesting man in the world.
We might as well be.
One of my favorites is his mom has a tattoo that says son. Well, this is Mr. Rupert Baker. He's one of the librarians of the Royal Society, and he was kind enough to remember him last time, kind enough to allow us a revisit. So I'll give you the floor. These are students from the University of South Florida. So they've been around, went to Cambridge last week. So anyway.
So you're doing history of...
It's basically, it's a biology, right, it's a genetic engineering honors class. So they're getting as much biology as they can.
The first thing I wanted to show you is just this minute book.
So we can't take pictures?
You can take pictures, yeah. Turn off the flash, please. Pictures are fun. So this is the minute book of the very first meeting of the Royal Society. Does anybody know how we go back when you study the Royal Society history?
1660-ish.
Yeah, stop at 60.
Oh,
1660,
60.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So this is the first official meeting of the Royal Society on the 28th of November 1660. But interestingly, in the first paragraph it talks about gentlemen meeting according to their usual custom. So that it's not out of the blue. They've been doing this in London 15, 20 years. Nobody really knows the pre-history of the society exactly. And there's also a very important group in Oxford in the 1650s, headed by John Wilkins at Wadham College. And he gets together people like Christopher Wren, Richard Lower, Thomas Lewis. Robert Hooke comes in as a laboratory assistant to Robert Boyle, who's also on the scene. So we'll come to Hooke in a minute. But the 12 people present at this first meeting are listed there, and it does include Robert Boyle, father of chemistry, Christopher Wren, who actually gives the lecture. And then what they do is they get down to business very quickly. They talk about £1 shilling per week to attend meetings of the society, 10 shillings down payment. And then that's the list
these are the signatures.
That's the list of potential recruits.
Oh, the recruits.
Yeah. Presumably glued in at a later date. There was a page at the beginning of signatures when they all come along in 5th of December.
Oh, look at the date, see, December the 5th, 1660. It's not far after the pilgrims left to the US, although it would be the US.
Yeah, right.
It's amazing.
Well, a lot of the early reports back to the Royal Society are sent in from the very young American colonies. People like John Locke start coming up with constitutions for Carolina and the other proto-colonies of the New World. And then a week later, when those signatures were put in, they also report that they got royal approval for this proposed society. So Robert Murray brought in word from the court, King Charles II approved of this proposed society. That's very important.
The bust, they have a bust of him up there.
Yeah, I've got the bust. I probably saw in the reception, we've got the mace, that long silver gilt one.
Oh, right.
It was given to us by King Charles II as a present. When we got our official royal charter. And the important thing about getting a royal charter is you can have a proper president and council and sort of decide your own constitution and business. And we were also allowed to print our own books. And that was a fairly limited privilege in those days. Not everybody could go and print what they wanted. Because they'd had 20 years of extreme disruption in the country before that. The Civil War in the 1640s. And then that's early.
Okay.
No, it's a civil war between King and Parliament. And we know what happened to the King. King Charles II's father.
It wasn't just in France that they did things.
So that period in the 1650s was the only period Britain has really not had a monarchy. It's been a parliamentary republic. king came back to the throne in 1660, and it was considered by then a reasonable time to set up these bodies like the Royal Society, a more stable king. So the first things that they started publishing was this journal, the Philosophical Transactions. And the important thing about this journal is it started in 1665 and it still continues. So it's the longest continually published scientific journal. And there's a few blank years around 1680. We won't talk about those. It's basically a continuous publication. So if somebody would like to read out, somebody would like to have a go at reading out some of the topic areas that they covered in the first issue of the Phil Trends.
Right here.
Yeah.
An introduction to the traction or an account of the improvement of optic glasses at Rome,
Okay. So we're talking about optics.
of the observations made in England of a spot in one of the belts of the planet Jupiter,
Okay. Astronomy. Yeah. Great red spot.
of the motion of the late comet predicted, that the heads of many new observations and experiments in order to an experimental history of cold.
Oh. Okay. So experimental history of coal. That's what boil on thermometry.
Together with some thermometrical discourses and experiments, a relation of a very odd monstrous calf.
Okay. A very odd, monstrous calf. Somebody sent in a description of mutant cow with two heads or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's genetics for you.
Yeah. One of the first plates in the Phil Trends is.
Oh,
I
there.
think that's actually a horse's head, a colt's head. There's a deformed calf in the very first issue, and there's a deformed colt in a few issues.
So if you don't mind, Rupert, if I ask you, do you worry about it? I guess when you're handling it tearing, or is it in good shape that it can withstand?
Yeah, you get the odd tear every now and then. The paper's reasonably good
It's reasonably
quality.
good.
Yeah. Some repair work has been done on some of these volumes, for example.
And then are you digitizing them?
Yeah, Phil Trans were in the middle of a big re-digitisation project online with lots more metadata. They're already up there, but it could have been done better the first time around, so we're redoing it.
So what happens when you do tear it?
Close it quickly and pretend it wasn't.
Look the other way.
Yeah. Wasn't
I'm
me.
as careful as I can be. There's inevitably going to be small
these are
some tears every now and then.
almost.
Of a peculiar lead ore in Germany, very useful for calcium. I think that's what it says.
Yeah, they're talking about lead ore. I'll just finish off the last things on the page. New American whale fishery about the Bermudas.
Oh.
So international trade and whale catching. And
Of the Hungarian bolus at the same effect with the bolus communis.
mineralogy, I think. And one of the last things they come up with is pendulum watches at sea for longitude. So they're always looking at the longitude for So there's a really vast range of interests in this philosophical transaction. Lots of botanical stuff. Lots of Boyle's experiments on the air pump and pressure and volume, etc. Yeah, those papers. I think we must have used some cheap paper stuff in those days.
Well, the fact that it's with 350 years.
Yeah,
so it's not.
Other books from the
The
period
printing.
survived better. It was basically
It's
at
like
the
a laser
beginning.
printer. I mean, it's not.
It was basically at the beginning of private initiative of the editor Henry Oldenburg, and he was probably trying to cut costs and use cheaper paper stuff.
And you said this continued to work on to this day.
Yeah.
So do they continue writing in that very book, or are there like 40 of these that are scattered all over the place?
Hang on a second, I'll show you what it looks like now.
This is the start, as we talked about in class. This is the start of peer reviews, and that's what makes science different than any other field. The idea of peer reviews.
Quick walk around.
high impact function.
I was telling them that was the perfect period.
Exactly,
That
yeah.
was, that's what made science fit.
Yeah, very important concepts coming in the early days of the Royal Society. They're looking for a language that will make science accessible. They try and create artificial languages for science. That doesn't really amount to anything. But, they're certainly coming to the concept that if you publish in here, that defines it as your invention. Nobody else can then claim that they've discovered something if they haven't published first. And the letters to the Society are read out at the weekly meetings. The best ones are accepted for the Filtrans, the worst ones are rejected, so you're getting concepts of peer review.
That is
So
quite.
this one.
That's quite less fanciful than the older text, the new proceedings.
Some would argue this is.
Yeah, there is a direct line from that to that. So this is the second book published by the Royal Society under our Royal Charter. It's Micrographia by Robert Hooke. So this is our first edition from 1665. It's a project dedicated to the King.